it is a sadly unique position to hold, and as elected public representatives, we must remember that we represent more than our political parties. We are ambassadors for our city and for our country.
Snatching the capital this afternoon, the DA is now in charge of all Gauteng metros. But will its fragile arrangements and narrow wins stand the test of time? Party leader John Steenhuisen is standing by to talk to us about the rough waters that the DA may have to navigate to make the country's economic hub work. Who is she? We get to know the person and politics behind the tough-talking new executive mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay.
I've made a commitment to the members of the coalition government that we will root out corruption. My mandate, as set out by the ANC election manifesto, is clear.
And whatever happened to her? How did she lose out? Refilwe Ntseke on why she put so much effort into her Ekurhuleni mayoral candidacy only for someone else to be elected in her place. Plus accusations and counter-accusations as the ANC and the IFP's much-vaunted agreement lies in ruins. All that and more in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts right now. Well, the Democratic Alliance has made a clean sweep in Gauteng, taking Ekurhuleni last night as well as Johannesburg, and this afternoon taking the capital, Tshwane. My party leader John Steenhuisen spoke earlier for the first time after the previous night, after last night's wins, and I want you to take a listen to what he had to say. He had to say during that address earlier in the day.
No quid pro quo for supporting our candidates. All we offer these parties is the opportunity to be on the right side of history. In the coming days, we will put proposals on the table to end corruption, improve service delivery, and to attract investment to these cities in order to create the jobs that are essential to lifting people out of poverty. It will then be up to them to show whether they are interested in this agenda or not. We look forward to working with any party that shares the vision for fixing these metros and providing a pathway out of desperate poverty for millions of South Africans.
John Steenhuisen speaking earlier on the back of those wins in Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni. Of course, a couple of hours later, the DA also took Tshwane, the capital. Well, John Steenhuisen joins us now for a discussion on what is going to happen next. Mr. Steenhuisen, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. Have you given yourselves time or timelines as to when exactly you are going to put the proposal you spoke about on that bite, and what you are going to do or who you will be speaking to, as that process unfolds?
Thank you, Vuyo, and it's great to be with you this evening, and thank you for the opportunity, and greetings to the viewers at home. Obviously, the events of the last few days have taken us somewhat by surprise. We certainly didn't expect to walk away with mayors in a number of cities as we have. And obviously, we obviously have to get to grips with exactly what has happened and what the implications are. But our main priority over the next few days will be trying to solidify and ensure that we are able to stabilize whatever governments we're able to form across South Africa. This is going to be very, very important, and I think to do so, the program of action, the objectives of the coalitions, are all set out in the coalition agreements that we have already entered into with a number of parties across the country, and they focus on a very pro-poor agenda, an agenda of combating corruption, an agenda of job creation and economic development, and an agenda of service, particularly basic service delivery across those metros. I think that this is something that parties can definitely coalesce around. Many of our municipalities are in deep crisis of both leadership, infrastructure, economic development and management. And I think that a stable coalition in each of these metros could well be the remedy towards addressing many of the problems and ills that the people within those metros face.
How receptive do you think your potential partners, or whatever you call them, will be this time around, just given what has happened, especially over the past few days? And perhaps before you answer that question, let me play a soundbite from Herman Mashaba last night in Johannesburg as the voting was ongoing.
Influence, our collaboration with other parties and our influence, these are the results of our commitment in unseating the ANC, and we're really very disappointed. And I actually heard the speaker saying that they think they are coalition partners. I just want to make it very clear, DA does not have any coalition with us. They refused point blank to get into coalition with us. But for us, we put South Africa first, because as I've always maintained, that a prosperous South Africa and an ANC cannot coexist in one space. One has got to die, and it can't be South Africa, it's got to be the ANC. And what the DA wanted to do to save them, we've now given them the responsibility. And we are ready as ActionSA and our coalition partners, if they want to come and talk to us. Beyond this, our doors are open. But I want to make it very clear to them that if they want to come and talk to us, they must come and talk to us with the EFF, because we don't want the games that they've played, the games of divide and rule. We voted for them as one bloc. So when they want to talk to us, they must come and talk to us in one bloc. For us as an ActionSA, our doors are open, but we are not going to talk to them on our own to ensure that we can have a stable government.
Two things, John, I wanted to address there. One, just the overall from what Herman Mashaba said in that clip and whatever else he said last night. While they are ready, or at least some of the people who could potentially be your partners are ready, they are very skeptical because of what they have encountered during this period since November 1. Speak to that first, please.
Well, what they've encountered is a principled position from the DA. And we've been very, very clear during the negotiations ahead of the election about what our principles were and how we would enforce those. And we were unbending on those principles. Secondly, I would say that now's not the time for name calling, for finger pointing. Now is the time, given the fact that they have chosen to vote for DA candidates in those metros, for us to try and find each other and come together and see if we can make something work. I don't think that's served by the sort of name calling and slagging off that we've seen. And I would hope that in the next coming days, maturity, seriousness, and a focus on what is best for the residents of those municipalities will be the order of the day. And I've said very clearly in the broadcast that I made earlier today that we are very humble and certainly going into these coalition agreements and arrangements with humility, but also generosity, but also on a principled basis. And so I'm very sorry to disappoint Mr. Mashaba, but we will not be joining any government or forming any government that has the EFF occupying positions within that government. We made a commitment to voters before the election that that would not be the case. And so the focus over the next couple of days is going to be on stabilizing those coalitions with like-minded partners. Now, I happen to regard ActionSA as a very good example of a like-minded partner who shares the values, principles, and objectives of the DA. And I'm very happy to talk to them and to see what we can do to shore up the coalition in Johannesburg. In Tshwane, we have a majority opposition-led coalition. We don't need to be wagged from outside the coalition by any other parties. And I would hope to talk to those parties who were not part of the opposition bloc in the vote in Joburg to see whether we could get them on board to shore up that particular coalition. Stability is going to be very, very important over the next few years, but stability cannot come without principle. And we've been very, very clear what our principles are, and to some that's been seen as hardball, but we made commitments to voters going into this election, and we intend to keep those commitments.
I want to go back to the words you used. You've just used maturity, humility, and generosity. And if, comments that have been made by people like Herman Mashaba, anything to go by, that's exactly what they are looking for, hoping for from the Democratic Alliance, not a stubborn refusal to even listen, or at least acknowledge that you are where you are because they are prepared to make that happen. And they have been clear about the fact that they are with you on your mission to dislodge the ANC. But you've got to take that a step further than you have done up until now. And if I get them correctly, that's what they are trying to say, and they're not getting it from you.
Well, to be fair, Vuyo, there's been no stubbornness or the like from the Democratic Alliance. We've been very consistent in our approach, and we could have achieved the agreement that we saw yesterday a week ago. You would know that the sticking point in Johannesburg had been who would be the mayor. We felt that as the largest party going into the coalition, with 71 seats, more than all the other opposition parties put together in Johannesburg, that we should have the opportunity to lead that coalition with the mayoralty. And you would know that the sticking point had been that Mr. Mashaba insisted with his 16% and his number of seats that he should be the mayor. He's now conceded that the Democratic Alliance should be the mayor and has voted for Mpopalatsi.
And he said as much last night. I'm saying he said as much last night, which then brings me to the next question. Did you then put an alternative on the table?
But sorry, Vuyo,
yes.
Yes, we did put an alternative on the table, and that is a matter of the public record. In fact, we put precisely the offer that was agreed to at the Johannesburg Council yesterday, a fortnight ago, in the coalition negotiations. And we could have gone into the council meeting with a sealed negotiation. But the point I'm trying to make, Vuyo, is that there's no point in going back and finger pointing and the like. What we need to now focus on is stabilizing those municipalities, being mature about it, and seeing what we can do to ensure that the alternative can work over the short, medium, and hopefully the long term. Now, some of these governments may be short-lived, but I've committed the party that whether they last 5 days, 5 months, or 5 years, that there will be principle-driven coalitions that operate on a focus on service delivery, a pro-poor agenda, and how we can lift the residents of the city who need our help the most out of poverty and into opportunity, but also to build a better future for every resident in those municipalities. That is the common objectives I think that we need to find each other on, and what we are going to be focusing like a laser beam on in the coming days as we try and shore up and solidify these governments. If we are not able to do that, and I've been very clear about this, because this is a matter of principle as well, if we cannot do that, and we're in a position where we have a gun to our head and we have to compromise our values and principles, we'd be quite prepared to take our seats up on the opposition benches in any one of those cities and to be an effective, efficient opposition. There's a lot of dignity in that, and there's an important role for an opposition to play. However, we believe that finding common objectives and a common program of action, coalescing around principle, that perhaps we can start to write a new future for the residents of those cities and bring good governance, clean and accountable governance, and a government that delivers to those municipalities. And that's going to be my focus. I'm not interested in getting into slanging matches with other opposition leaders. Now is the time for cool heads to prevail, for us to look around and sit around the table and look at each other in the eye and see what is possible for us to achieve over the coming weeks, months, and hopefully years for the people in all of those cities.
Was there, speaking of possibilities, was there no possibility whatsoever to, for example, with regards to the EFF, say perhaps on an issue by issue, we're putting this on the table in return for you agreeing with us on this or the other question? Was there no room for that? Because you seem to be adopting a completely different attitude to them, or compared to, for example, ActionSA.
But with respect, I've been very clear about what that position is, even going into the election. And it's been on your show, on your channel, and a number of other channels, the very clear position of the DA that we won't be going into a government with the EFF. And that's a commitment we intend to keep. Where we can find commonality and where there's an agreement on things like budgets and IDPs, well, we'll try and bring as many people as possible along in those municipalities. I think that consensus and bringing people together is going to be the hallmark of these coalitions around the country over the next few years. And we're willing to listen to any party that shares those values and principles and shares those objectives for the people of those municipalities. And our job is going to be now to reach out and try and find that consensus. But I want to be abundantly clear that we will not be held to ransom by the policies and principles of other parties that are the antithesis of what we believe as an organization. And should that be the case, we would be more than prepared to take up our seats once again on the opposition benches and be an excellent, vigilant opposition in those municipalities. But however, other parties have now entrusted us with the leadership of those councils, and we've got a duty to try now and find that consensus and to bring those people together around a common program of action that's going to bring prosperity and hope to those municipalities, and through those municipalities, hopefully to South Africa as well. And that's going to be our focus over the coming days and weeks.
Now, this takes me to an issue, in fact, you just spoke about yourself, but I'm being deliberate about bringing a soundbite from the person who is going to say it. It's the ANC president, Cyril Ramaphosa, who was asked by our politics editor, Mzwandile Mbeje, earlier today for a reaction to what happened yesterday. Here's what he had to say.
As president of the governing party, it is disappointing for the African National Congress, but that is how we should accept the clear message of our people on the African National Congress. We've taken heed, we have listened, and this for us is a big setback, but it is also a big lesson. And we are a party that learns very quickly, and we are going to go to the drawing board. We are going to reflect on all these setbacks. And all we want to see, speaking now as the President of the Republic, I'd like to see stability in our local government sector, that whatever coalitions have been formed and are being formed will result in stable local government, that we do not have instability and collapse of local governments, motions of no confidence, to a point where service delivery will not be given to the people of our country. So I will call on those who have emerged victorious to say, ensure that there is stable government and congratulate those who have succeeded.
Well, battered and bruised ANC president, but I think he speaks for all of us about the stability that's going to be required, but also the maturity and humility of those who have emerged victorious.
Yes, certainly, and I associate myself fully with the comments of the president, and I think they are both apt and correct from the head of state in South Africa, because the focus has to be on service delivery, and service delivery can only happen through stable governments that are able to focus like a laser beam on getting the basics right. Local government in South Africa is in a deep crisis for you, and you don't need to be a political scientist, you don't need to be a town planner, you don't need to be a water or electrical engineer to understand just how deep the crisis in local government runs and how service delivery has been compromised. And I would sincerely hope that where we are in opposition, we will be constructive. Where we are in government, we will be humble and listening, and that we will seek to bring people together to build a consensus around service delivery. I think the time for petty squabbling at a local government level has passed. I think the people of South Africa are looking to all of us, all parties, no matter what the color of our T-shirts are, to provide stable leadership that's going to deliver services. And most importantly, focus on uplifting people out of poverty and into opportunity. Cities can play a huge role in city-led growth and city-led job creation. And I think that they need to take their rightful place there. But that can only happen if they are stable and able to perform their functions. Now, you would know in a place like Tshwane, for instance, that our attempts at delivering stable government over the last few years have been thwarted by a government that has not wanted to accept the democratic outcome there. And I hope that there is going to be a new level of maturity now as we seek to find each other across party lines, to focus on the one thing that matters more than anything. And that is, how can we serve the people of South Africa and how can we serve them best? And I would certainly, as a leader of a party that is now in the lead in a number of municipalities, thanks to the votes of a number of other parties, be reaching out and trying to bridge those divides and overcome those differences so that we can focus on delivering for the people of South Africa, because that should be uppermost in our minds always.
I want to bring your attention to something you also said earlier when you gave that address about the fact that, well, let's take a listen.
The EFF and ActionSA's support for our candidates came with no strings attached. And everyone who voted in support of a DA candidate yesterday knew that we would not allow a gun to be held to our head in this arrangement. The crucial threshold that was crossed yesterday was a psychological one. Today, the whole of South Africa knows that the ANC can be beaten. We no longer live in a single-party dominated democracy, and that is a watershed moment in our history.
Psychological threshold, the ANC can be beaten. But what people have been saying, or the point that people have been making, is that you have had to do what you've just done, in Gauteng particularly, with the help of this host of other political parties. And you should then guard against overplaying your hand and exaggerating your strengths and abilities for the very same reason that your arch rivals, the ANC's president, said earlier about how important it is for those who are emerging victorious out of these processes to really take into account or keep, I mean, understand that it is very important for stability. Stability is very important in those municipalities, whatever differences you may have. And at some point, you may even have to reconsider your standpoint, even if it's based on principle, if the interests of those people in those municipalities are being threatened.
But Vuyo, when people stray away from principle, that's when people start to be threatened. And I think that people need to know where parties stand on various issues and know that each party has got red lines that they will not accept being crossed. And one of the things that I think we learned very well over the last 5 years, and bearing in mind that coalitions were relatively new in South Africa over the last 5 years, we've learned some of those significant lessons. And that's why I can say quite unequivocally that we will not compromise on principle. And if that even means that we've got to then return to the opposition benches, we will be prepared to do so. I think it's important that people know where they stand when political parties make undertakings and agree to certain values and principles. And they need to be able to take those to the bank. And I certainly am very prepared to work and try and find other parties. But where that comes to an important threshold of violating your core values and principles, we've learned in the past that that can only end in tears and can only end badly for the residents in any particular city. So we will be very mindful of that fact. And as I say, we are certainly not sitting in a triumphalist mood. I'm very chastened and I'm very humbled by the trust that's been placed in us. And I'm very mindful of the fact that we've not got here on our own and that there have been other players who've been involved. And we will attempt to try and find a common program of action with those people, not simply imposing the DA's will or saying it's our way or the highway. We'll be looking to find that consensus across all party lines to be able to bring that stability that the President spoke about when he made his address earlier in the day.
Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for being generous with your time this evening.
Thank you for having me, Vuyo. It's always a pleasure. And a great bow tie as well, I must say.
Thank you, John Steenhuisen, the leader of the Democratic Alliance. Well, up next, you're going to speak to one person who put so much effort into her Ekurhuleni mayoral candidacy, only for someone else to be elected in her place last night. We also bring you accusations and counter-accusations, as the ANC and the IFP's much vaunted agreement now lies in ruins. That and more coming up in a moment. Don't go away. Well, the question many people have been asking since the election yesterday of Ekurhuleni mayor is whatever happened to Refilwe Ntseke? How did she lose out? After all, she had put so much effort into her Ekurhuleni mayoral candidacy, only for someone else to be elected in her place last night. Well, she joins us now to tell us what actually happened. Refilwe?
Well, good evening, and let me greet South Africa, but particularly the residents of Ekurhuleni, and thanks for having me on. I think, Vuyo, I just want to unpack some background, and it's important people have context that when I became the successful candidate after the DA selection process, I was asked as a sitting MPL whether if we lost the municipality, I would stay on as a councillor or I would go back to serving as an MPL. And I said to the leadership, I will go back to serving as an MPL, but I do intend to win the municipality outright, which is what I set out to do, to give the people of Ekurhuleni hope and get things done for them. So after the official results were announced, there was a federal council meeting, federal executive meeting, where the DA was very clear that we will not govern with EFF and will not go into coalition talks with them at all. And definitely we will not govern with ANC because our job was to take out the ANC. So when the official results came out, we had 28.72%. And remember, to govern, we needed 50.1%, and that would have been outright or in some form of a stable coalition with somebody we aligned with from values and so on. And so once that had been done, I did some number crunching, and of course I consulted provincial leadership. And even with that number crunching, there was no way of getting to 50%. Even if you look at everything else, EFF had 13, ActionSA had 6.60, Freedom Front have 3.30%. We could not get to the 51%, except if it was EFF and ANC, and that was definitely not the resolution of the Democratic Alliance Federal Executive. And so I made a decision to say we have lost Ekurhuleni, and I submitted my resignation on the 8th of November to my provincial leadership. And so last week I chatted to Tanya. They had caucus meetings, which I stopped attending because obviously we had lost, and she was elected as the caucus leader, and she was the caucus leader in the previous term as well. And when tradition that we have as the Democratic Alliance being the official opposition party is, even if the ANC puts forward a candidate, we still put a candidate forward. The last thing we expected, which was the biggest surprise to everyone, was the fact that EFF chose to support the Democratic Alliance in Ekurhuleni. I was in attendance. I was a party agent on behalf of the party and showing support to my fellow colleagues of Ekurhuleni. And then we won. We first won the speaker, we won the mayorship, and then we won the chief whip of council. And that's basically what happened, Vuyo. It's not anything malicious. It's something I had agreed with the leadership of the organization to say, I would like to govern so that when the vision I had sold to the people of Ekurhuleni, I have a solid 5 years to implement, either through an outright majority or with a stable coalition where we can make sure that we turn things around for the people of Ekurhuleni. And that's where I'm coming from, Vuyo. And I appreciate the opportunity for you guys to ask me the questions and understand why Refilo is not the mayor of Ekurhuleni today.
So it is not true, as you would have seen on social media, people saying, no, you're only useful for campaigning, and when the big moment came, you were kicked to the side.
No. Yesterday, I remember I said my resignation went in on the 8th of November. Yesterday was the 22nd of November. So I was there to support the team. Why would I even go there to support the team if I'd been kicked to the side? Secondly, we will remember I'm still a sitting deputy federal chairperson of the Democratic Alliance, the first deputy, in fact. Nobody kicks me to the side. And if 2026 came, and I still became the successful mayoral candidate to help the DA get into government with an outright majority, I will still stand again, because I feel for the people of Ekurhuleni that more people should have voted for the Democratic Alliance. We had a solid vision, solid implementation plan, and we didn't get the opportunity to have implemented it for the 5 years. And earlier today, the leader, federal leader John Steenhuisen, said to us, when he spoke on Inside Track, to say, we know that these governments are not going to be particularly stable because we have been put into government by EFF, and there's no telling when they might decide to take us out of government. But I know Tanya, and I will support her. We will try as much as possible to implement the vision we had for Ekurhuleni, and we will still try and make sure we kickstart service delivery. At least for a while, we will block the taps of corruption for the ANC and start sorting out the finances of Ekurhuleni. On the campaign trail, there was a lot of things I exposed in terms of corruption and lack of service delivery in this metro. Tanya was a caucus leader. Even when I was campaigning, she was literally my right hand, and we discussed issues. So it's not like she's a new person. She will still be able to run with that vision of the Democratic Alliance for Ekurhuleni and implement and make sure that we try and start steering Ekurhuleni in the right direction to try and start getting service delivery to the residents of Ekurhuleni. But we must be honest with ourselves, 28.72% is not an outright win. It is a government propped up by the EFF, which any time, it could be a week, it could be 6 months, we do not know, but we could be out of government again.
I mean, if then by John Steenhuisen's, by the first deputy, chairperson, of the Federal Council, and everyone else in the leadership of the DA, you acknowledge that these arrangements, or the Ekurhuleni arrangement in particular, is not going to be stable. And if you acknowledge that you can be unseated at any time, aren't you setting up Tanya Campbell for failure?
No. The fact that there is an opportunity to start dealing with corruption, it's an opportunity to start helping the residents of Ekurhuleni have a taste of what a DA-led government is going to look like. And especially when you look at the mismanagement of funds in this particular metro, where the metro claims they've got a clean audit, but the lived experiences of the residents on the ground do not translate to that clean audit. The fact that the public protector even said Kempton Park has violated its constitutional mandate by not doing refuse removal. These are some of the things that will be dealt with, at least for the people to start experiencing service delivery under a DA-led government. No matter how short the period, but to kickstart that process so people can start tasting what it feels like when services get delivered. That's important. We have a valuation role, which many citizens of Ekurhuleni are very unhappy with how their properties were valued. This is an opportunity for Tanya to actually, in one of her priorities, to set this aside and say, this was not done properly. It devalued houses or overvalued people's properties, and now people are paying exorbitant rates and taxes. So there is still things that can be done as quick wins, where people of Ekurhuleni can still find themselves saying, even though DA governed for a short period, something was done positive, our lives were uplifted.
Okay. And that's where we're going to leave it. Thank you so much for your time and for your explanations this evening. Refilwe Nteke, who was, of course, the DA's mayoral candidate for Ekurhuleni, but as she has just explained, she did opt out when she saw the numbers that came through after the November 1 elections. Not in a million years did she think that the DA even stood a chance. But hey, guess what? That's exactly what happened. The opposite actually happened last night. Tanya Campbell was elected mayor of Ekurhuleni, but of course, by Refilwe Nteke's own admission, it's an arrangement that can be untenable because can be unstable. They can be unseated at any time. Well, we'll see what comes out of that. Now, our reporter, Matlaku Okomane, was following events from yesterday and today. This is the report that she filed earlier today.
One of many informal settlements that dot Ekurhuleni. Unemployment is rife here east of Johannesburg. 21 days later, Campbell's victory has brought mixed emotions.
We are disappointed by the results. We were once led by a DA candidate. There was nothing happening here during that time.
We are happy with DA leading the city. Maybe something will change.
Those not familiar with Campbell's political profile, she's been a councillor here since 2000. In her 21 years at the Metro, Campbell has held various positions such as DA member for community safety and caucus leader. While Campbell admits she was pleasantly surprised by her election, she says service delivery, stable power supply and jobs will dominate her tenure.
Long-term plan will definitely be worked out to entice and encourage developers and businesses to work in Ekurhuleni, to invest in Ekurhuleni.
However, Campbell's first tasks will be to ensure a unanimous voting bloc in council. Political analysts say those who propelled her into the positions have different policies, which could see the party forced into council resolutions. Just what kind of leadership Campbell will bring in is not known. Residents, though, are hoping they do not become pawns in a political chess game. Mahlako Komani, SABC News, Ekurhuleni.
Now, earlier when we started the show, we promised to bring you the new executive mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay. She agreed yesterday to come on the program. We did tell you about, as soon as she was elected, we put in a request for her to come on the program. We wanted her to come on last night, and she couldn't, agreeing to come on today. We wanted to get to know her, the person and the politics behind this tough-talking new executive mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay. Well, a short while ago, in fact, while the show was on, we got word from her team that she will no longer participate in the program. She is no longer taking interviews. We don't know what exactly happened there. Well, we hope, though, that it's not a sign of things to come when you enter into agreements or you make promises and end up not fulfilling them. You're still welcome, though, ma'am, to come on as soon as you are available again. To this story now, the ANC and IFP's cooperation agreement in hung councils in KwaZulu-Natal collapsed even before the start of these council seatings. Both parties had agreed to not contest each other, who each had the majority seats in the 21 hung municipalities. This excluded municipalities classified as economic hubs.
Abaqulusi and Mthonjeni municipalities were amongst the first hung council that the IFP says it was not supported by the ANC despite the standing agreement. The party also claims that the ANC contested positions in Ingutu and Jozini, where the IFP had an outright majority. This breach of trust led to the fallout of the agreement and saw IFP councillors defying party orders. On Monday, council meetings in Alfred Duma municipality in Ladysmith, Umhlatuze municipality in Richards Bay, and Umhlabialingan municipality in far north of the province descended into chaos. Sparks flew and fistfights were thrown into the battle for their control. The IFP says one of the reasons for the breach of the agreement was that the ANC refused to consider sharing some of the municipalities in the economic hub.
But we're quite very disappointed with what has happened. As a result, our members on the ground who are councillors, seeing what was happening, they realized that we're going to wake up without a municipality out of the municipalities because of the dishonesty. Because even if we had the arrangement, talks that were made with other parties in different areas, localized talks, were posing a threat to any prosperity to the IFP in KwaZulu-Natal to govern those particular hung municipalities.
The ANC is pointing fingers at the IFP for reneging on the agreement and not supporting it in Newcastle and eThekwini.
In eThekwini, once the council was adjourned by the speaker, then they took a decision, some comrades, for whatever reason, to come in and toy inside the council chamber. I don't know what they were toying for, because by that time already the council had been adjourned by the speaker because there was an electric fault which led to the council being postponed.
ANC leaders in the province have requested a full report from the leaders in the eThekwini region after party members were allegedly bussed to the Mos Mabhida Stadium, where the inauguration council meeting was sitting. The ANC members broke down barricades and forced their way into the venue. Londi Khatebe, SABC News, Durban.
Disturbing cell phone footage there. One wonders where it's going to go from here. Well, the ANC and the IFP have not been available for a good few days now to actually talk to their agreement that seems to have fallen apart. But as you have heard from the regional leaders of the two parties, the one party is blaming the other for having betrayed the other before. The ANC was supposed to have a briefing yesterday addressed by its Deputy Secretary General, Jesse Duarte. That briefing was postponed to today, and today it was postponed again. The IFP also agreed to come on perhaps today, and today they went AWOL. So we don't know what's happening, but I'm sure a lot of South Africans like me would like to know what actually happened and whether scenes like the ones you have just seen are what we're going to see going into the future and what that means for the people of those municipalities who are not expecting fights but are expecting service delivery. For an update on other councils now, the embattled Mamusa Municipal Council in Swaziland in the northwest may face fresh elections. Yesterday's council meeting was disrupted after the EFF candidate for Speaker, Olibeng Mohorosi, was elected. The ANC caucus had instructed its councillors to vote for the former mayor, Dr. Batsi, as Speaker, and Seitebaleng Chele as mayor. SABC journalist Tebogo Pagedi and video journalist Moleboheng Riane filed this report.
The ANC obtained an outright majority to run the council by receiving 9 seats following the elections in the 16-seat Mamusa Local Municipal Council. The EFF has 4 seats, the DA, Freedom Front Plus and the Azanian Independent Community Movement have 1 seat each. During the council sitting, the ANC nominated former Mayor Dr. Batsi as the Speaker candidate, while the EFF elected its councillor Olibeng Mohorosi. EFF's Mohorosi beat Batsi by 2 votes to become Speaker. Chaos erupted, disrupting the meeting. The meeting was rescheduled but could not correct later when it resumed because all ANC councillors did not attend. It was indefinitely adjourned.
One of the major reasons why this adjournment was necessary was that the majority of the councillors were not present. Our council has 16 councillors. Only 5 councillors were present in this meeting. But secondly, the nature of the items that were to be discussed by this adjourned meeting necessitated that all other councillors are there.
The EFF has welcomed the election of its councillor as the Speaker.
The beauty of this process is that we have to go through a secret ballot. So we don't know who voted for us because we were only negotiating with the opposition party. But we want to take this opportunity to thank whoever who's voted for the EFF to obtain the position of the Speaker.
On the other hand, the ANC condemned their councillors who defied the party's mandate.
We are sick and tired as the ANC to have councillors who do as they wish and as they please. We are suffering reputational damage by councillors who conduct themselves willy-nilly. What we are going to do, we are not going to leave the situation unattended. Disciplinary processes are going to be invoked against these councillors, and where necessary, a sentence will be meted against their actions.
Meanwhile, a local expert has warned time is not on the council's side.
Those municipalities that will not be able to comply with the requirements of the law and convene because they are unable to form a quorum by end of business today will be subjected to a new fresh elections.
The SABC News has now learned that the Mamusa Local Municipal Council plans to reconvene another meeting this morning. Tebogo Pagedi, SABC News, Swaziland.
Newly elected Sol Plaatje Mayor Kagiso Sonyoni is the youngest ever to hold the position in that municipality. The 26-year-old who was elected earlier today had a bumpy start to his term. There were service delivery protests outside the Kimberley City Hall where he was sworn in. Sonyoni inherits a city beset with problems. Water, electricity and sewage and potholes all need his attention.
Mayor Kagiso Sonyoni inherits a city beset with problems. Water, electricity, sewage and potholes are issues that need his immediate attention. Service delivery protest erupted even before he wore the mayoral chain.
11 years!
We've been staying in Rimfasmark for 11 years without any services. What must we do? Must we stop protesting or must we go on? Sonyoni says his administration will have a no-nonsense approach to service delivery.
We must make sure that we deliver services to our people. We must not have money that is coming back. We must make it the point that we spend the money so that each and every problem that we have in our society can be achieved and can be eradicated.
Sonyoni holds 2 degrees in economics but has little work experience. He says his focus and plans center around the youth.
We've got the issue of unemployment in Sol Plaatje municipality. What we need to do, we need to skill young people. Young people should go to school. Young people should come back and apply their skills within the municipality.
There's been excitement from young people in the city around the election of Sonyoni. Many have been calling for more young people to take up positions of power. Ulrich Hendricks, SABC News, Kimberley, Northern Cape.
And that brings us to the end of our show this evening. Sincere apologies for promising to bring you the newly elected mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay and not delivering on our promise. It was indeed, the interview was indeed, to once again reiterate what I said earlier, organized yesterday after her election. We wanted her to come on last night. She couldn't and said she would do it today. And as late as when the show started at 8 o'clock, we were still on track with that interview. Unfortunately, she pulled out. Apologies for our part in what happened, but as I said earlier, we're still open. She can come anytime and we'll accommodate her here on the program. That's our show for this evening. Good night. Let's talk again tomorrow.